Cześć! So, sadly my laptop is still in the shop. After waiting about a week, I gave them a call on Friday and they're going to give it a clean. They found some water damage, so it's progress. So now I'm just waiting for more news. Hopefully water damage is the only issue, but we shall see. But until I get the laptop back, I'm kind of shying away from doing any of the more fancy videos. So please bear with me. I hope it will be back. But today I wanted to talk about some of the recent events in Poland, because there have been quite a few that you've most likely seen in the media, and maybe a few that you haven't. So I wanted to try and give a bit of like an inside view of like how things are going here. So one thing that's been happening for the last few months is, of course, the issue with the Belarusian border. So we are still, having refugees coming in from Iraq, Middle East, Africa, crossing through that like route into Belarus over land, and the Belarusian government pushing them through to Poland, saying that they'll be welcome and not to worry, giving them supplies, giving them soldiers escorts, and they arrive at the border of Poland, and of course they're met with the army. So it's not that none of them have been let through, but the ones that have been, there have been some stories, or of course there are people that have been able to get around the heavy razor wire fencing which is following the border. In fact, I think much like Trump's vision, Poland is proposing to build a big border wall which is actually going to cut through Europe's oldest forest. So it's wonderful. But these refugees, like, there have been some examples of they get past the defences and then they get lost in these, vast, expansive woods. There have been some deaths due to the cold. And of course they're afraid to contact the authorities because they know as soon as the authorities get involved, they'll be detained. And even today I saw an article talking about the state of detention centres. Apparently even one of Poland's ministers has said that they're not fit for purpose. And the about 100 refugees are are taking on a hunger strike to protest against the conditions. Of course, I think none or very few of these refugees actually want to, base themselves in Poland. They wouldn't earn enough money here. This is the general thing. Like, if they can go to Germany or Sweden or even to the UK or France or wherever they're hoping to go, somewhere that pays in the euro, that is kind of welcoming and accepting, this is their aim. They want to be able to have that kind of better quality of life. Not that it's a bad quality of life here in Poland, but obviously if you're earning money in euro compared to zloty, you're a lot better off, and this is how people are seeing it. I don't think this problem is going to go away anytime soon. It certainly hasn't been in the media as much recently, but it's still an issue. But of course, another issue, and this is known all over the world, is Russia and Ukraine. Will Russia invade, or won't they invade? This is the big question. Nobody's quite sure what's going to happen. There's been a lot of rhetoric. In fact, even last week we had Boris Johnson coming to visit. So he had a chat with the Polish Prime Minister, with Duda, I believe. And he went to visit the British troops, and he was showing his solidarity with Poland. And now we're receiving more armed forces into our country. So I think we had about an extra 300 British soldiers come here for logistical support. The US already has several army bases based in Poland. So they've been increasing their support as well. But what is the actual preparation on this side of the fence for an incursion into Ukraine? So already the Polish government have said if there are any like American refugees that are fleeing Ukraine, they are more than welcome to come into Poland. They will be welcomed here with open arms. So this is one thing. But then something else, again, a development I saw today, is the Polish government has been asking the various kind of avoid ships they have here what their capacity is to deal with refugees. Because there is a chance that if there is this incursion, we are going to see a lot of people from Ukraine fleeing across the border. The Polish government is predicting up to 1 million. It could be much higher than that. I mean, Poland already has a population of about 256,000, perhaps a bit more, but these figures are from 2021. But yeah, quite a sizable number of people living here from Ukraine. You know, I have a few Ukrainian colleagues. You know, it's certainly not uncommon to encounter somebody from Ukraine, especially in Warsaw. You know, we have a lot of nationalities here, and you know they're welcome. Like a lot of them, you know, it's the same situation with immigration in a lot of countries. You have a lot of them in, say, the service sector. So working in shops or for companies like Uber. So, you know, but of course you have high skilled as well. As I say, I've had several colleagues from Ukraine and various other countries. So, you know, and generally they're welcome here. You know, you don't hear a lot of negative talk about Ukrainians. Of course, you get the odd joke here and there. I mean, I don't know any off the top of my head, but, you know, to say that everyone is 100% happy with Ukrainians in the country would be a lie. But then, you know, it's the same in every country when you have people from outside. Of course, the Ukrainian language is quite similar to Polish. So when Ukrainians move here, it's a lot easier for them to pick up the language than, say, someone like me. Though I am still trying. I'm still having my 2 lessons a week. But of course, Poland knows all too well what it's like to deal with Russia. I would say on the whole, relationships between Poland and Russia at the moment are probably friendlier than they have been in most times in history. Of course, you know, it's been about 30 years or so since Poland was liberated from kind of Russian rule as such. After the Second World War, as you may or may not know, Poland was like a satellite state for the Soviet Union. So even though they didn't have, you know, direct Russian rulers kind of based in the country, the government was kind of a puppet government. And it took like movements such as Solidarność to really kind of break a lot of the control that Russia had. And there were a lot of underground newspapers and the Poles are masters of doing things under the radar. So they have had to contend with a lot of that in their history. I mean, this is a country that didn't exist for 100 years, and they tried to erase the Polish language, and that's kept going strong. You know, very strong. You know, like honestly, living in Poland without knowing any Polish at all is a nightmare. And yeah, if you are thinking of moving here, take some lessons first, is my general advice. But on the whole, are my friends worried about a Russian invasion? Honestly, not. I mean, from Russia invading Ukraine to invading Poland is a massive different situation. You know, for one thing, Poland is a member of the European Union. And although its allies kind of turned its back in the past, I like to think that we have a stronger kind of solidarity with the West now. So any invasion by Russia into Poland would be seen as an act of war against the European Union and would probably trigger World War III. As much I don't want that to happen. Of course, like in the UK, like my mum, I think I mentioned in another video, was saying, you know, if Russia does invade Ukraine, are you going to move back to the UK? And my answer was no, because it doesn't affect my life here in Poland. And as a whole, we're not really worried about that situation. I have colleagues in Estonia, however, who are a bit more concerned right now, because from what you hear, effectively, if Russia do go ahead with the invasion of Ukraine and they are successful in that invasion, then the Baltics will be next. Especially as you have a very recent history, you have a lot of Russian people or people with kind of Russian allegiance living in the Baltics. I saw this a bit when I was in Lithuania, for example. I remember going to one bar that was distinctly Russian in design. It was a bit, dilapidated, but you could see all the hallmarks were there, including the giant poker table. But as a whole, we're not really too worried about the Russian situation. We're just trying to think of what the potential fallouts are going to be here. And yeah, as I've said, I just hope that if things do go bad, that history serves as a reminder of why we shouldn't just let things go, and we should be standing up for these nations that are being oppressed. Going into Ukraine, I don't know. I don't know if that will happen. If Russia invades, will there be any kind of counterattack? What kind of measures, will America or the UK or even the European Union, basically what will NATO do? Remains to be seen. And then going to some more kind of domestic matters, there are still controversial things happening in this country. I try not to talk about Polish politics a lot, but one thing that is directly impacting people at the moment is at the start of the year, the tax system was changed. So on the whole, when you heard it described, it didn't sound too bad, because we have various tax thresholds. So once you got to something like 80 or 90,000 zloty, you were effectively being taxed 30%. This limit has now gone, I think, to 120,000 zloty a year. Or should I say zlotik? Rather than zloty. I've learned this in my lessons. They have different ways of saying zloty in this country. But on the whole, that sounds like a positive. But then what also happened is they increased basically the national insurance contribution. So people are, paying less tax potentially on the one hand, paying more tax potentially on the other. And I haven't really heard of many people that have been positively impacted. A lot more people have been quite negatively impacted. So this is another, shall we say, well, I don't want to say nail in the coffin of the government, because sadly, I don't know what they could do to become unpopular in the rest of Poland. I know peace is very unpopular in general in Warsaw, and it's much like the UK, where you have, a lot of support for the kind of more leftist factions in the big cities, and then you get out of the big cities and you have more of a kind of popularity for the right. I would like to learn more about Polish politics. It's one of those delicate subjects, though, and the more people I talk to about it, the more heated the discussions get. I'm kind of trying to be a neutral observer. I would never tell people who to vote for. I try not to be partisan. I can just say that a lot of the measures that this government have taken, especially in recent years, are generally quite unpopular. They changed the abortion rule, I think was only supported by something like 13% of the country, but they still ploughed ahead. Unfortunately, you still have this kind of religious attachment to a lot of the laws and ways of thinking about freedoms in this country. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But we shall see. people talked about some kind of election this year, but then I remember there was like a general election like 2 years ago, so I need to double check on that one. But for sure, I think the governmental support is going to be lower in the next election. I think they've taken a number of steps that have kind of upset a large proportion of voters. But then, you know, I'm talking very much from a Warsaw perspective. And I can't speak for the whole country, and I would never try to. I would like to know more people from kind of rural Poland, or, you know, just kind of like the smaller cities in Poland, you know, and I'm trying to get that view of the country as I go around. But yeah, so today was just a little bit of a discussion about some of the issues that Poland is going through at the moment, some of the things that it's going to have to face and deal with, which is perhaps a bit of a gloomy subject, but we're still in that gloomy time of year where the temperatures are cold and, you know, people are sick. The level of corona is very high at the moment. I think we're talking, you know, 50,000 people being infected a day kind of numbers. I have to admit that might be a little out of date. I haven't checked in a few days. But there's potentially some light coming. So in March, I've heard that the government are planning to repeal a lot of the corona laws, whether you agree with the restrictions being relaxed or not. The UK is certainly heading in this direction. They've basically just said we're going to live with COVID now. And a lot of the studies have found that the amount of effort put into the lockdowns was kind of a waste of time. So the lockdowns actually caused more harm than good. But I think we all know that the lockdowns were primarily to keep hospital numbers lower. Did they? It's hard to say, but the statistics don't back up that at the moment. And when you outweigh people's mental health and the number of operations and things that were put on hold, to focus on corona, then. But yeah, this is a whole other topic, and again, a controversial one. So I wouldn't be surprised if I had some slightly angry comments with this video. But you can never please everyone, I'll say that. But I would like to think that soon we will have some better weather. And with the better weather, we'll have a little bit more goodness, soul, health, and everything coming with it. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully the next video you'll see will be something a bit more educational, showing you a bit more of the country, or some key things that I'm trying to document at the moment. Whenever there's a ray of sunshine in the sky, I'm going out there and I'm building up my footage for Warsaw, because I judge it's a bit too cold to really be traveling around Poland at this time of year. But anyway, I'm rambling, so I'll stop there. But again, thank you very much for watching, and do zobaczenia, or see you again soon.